Engineer's mate Rigby stood by the railing. He wasn't necessary for the launch of the vessel, though his primary task was only getting ready to begin. He wiped his brow with an oily rag, not really concerned with the grease it might have left there, as he wasn't going to be seeing anyone important anyway. As he turned and made his way down the gangplank and into the engineering compartment, which was known as the cage, he considered his plight. His association with the recent affiliation of Rigby and May has been concluded, and his feelings about that gentleman are somewhat mixed. He descends into the heart of the cage in front of the large panoply of gears and gauges that he is responsible for watching over, and he thinks about Mr. May a bit. They hadn't left on the best of terms. It was a situation where Mr. Rigby simply wanted to find his way back to his family. He understood full well that with the advancement of the warfighting forces nearing the border of his beloved Bylon, he needed to send them away, but it concerned him that she had left so quickly and so abruptly with children. He wasn't sure how far he was going to be able to endure this, but he knew that the 3-year agreement that he had signed would nonetheless be held for his get this hat right eventually. The assignment would be his responsibility for that 3-year stint. Just a little over 1,000 days, but it was rather significant. He heard the heavy clank of the outer doors of the vessel as they started their ascent in earnest. He took a quick view of the gauges and found them all to be in the satisfactory range, which he definitely expected, as this is the maiden voyage of the great dreadnought. His role was tiny, but his duty here was actually quite significant. You see, Mr. Rigby has a mission. There is something that is not right within the established governance, and he was here to ferret it up. Hello everybody, I'm Jonathan Albin, and this is Roleplay Roulette. If you have not heard of this, it is the new way to play. I will endeavor to incorporate your actions as you present them in the comment section of YouTube, or by joining me in the conversation here via the chat box. I do have the ability to see that, even though I'm focusing on carrying this message to you, but if you present information in this, it will change the dynamic story. We are now going to enter the period that is known as Our Story So Far. I will bring to you information about the 4 topics that are here, and we'll perhaps follow the exploits of Engineer's Mate Rigby soon enough. First off, the BBS Dreadnought. It is a warship of the First Order, built by design by the Balani shipworks in their capital of Canaveral. We are currently underway, and the vessel has a displacement of a god-awful number of tons. It sports a 4-place engine, and the 4 places in this compartment are classic compression decompression chambers. Huge and mighty pistons drive the shaft that turns the wheels that are mounted to the rear of the craft, both port and starboard. The elevation is maintained by gauging the amount of pressure in the 4 ballast tanks known as the boom tanks, currently filled with the dark and dangerous gas known as brisum. The process will endeavor to push this ship up to a maximum speed of about 25 knots, and that speed will carry them roughly 50 to 75 miles in a day. That doesn't seem like much, but the vessel, after all, is built as a heavier than air dirigible. What that means in essence is that the ship reaches neutral buoyancy when the bristle tanks are at full capacity, and then the amount of pressure that is pushed into them drives its elevation. The crew component is approximately 350 souls on board, with an additional 150. I can't believe I catch myself on these. What is the word I'm looking for? They could have 150 additional passengers on board in forward compartments near the front of the gondola, which lies suspended under the boom tanks. The vessel's weaponry includes several of the larger black barrel cannons and a launch pad for the aircraft known as Dreadnought Squadron. These vessels are designed for faster flight and relatively short flight duration, usually remaining in there somewhere between 45 minutes an hour before they have to return for replenishment. The landing pad for these craft is aloft on the upper deck of the vessel, far above the boom tanks, but that flat surface is tenuously guarded by a few anti-aircraft guns mounted fore and aft in pods of 4. So while it is a large vessel, it is by no means defenseless. On the other hand, it is not in a position to hold its own should it come under active enemy fire. And so the Dreadnought is accompanied on missions by at least a couple of frigates and a destroyer, as well as a minesweeper. So these vessels all have concerted their departure from the capital, Canaveral, and are climbing into the air over the Bylon Plains, heading southward. We've gone over a bit of that description before, so we'll come back to that when we talk about the setting details. In particular, let us talk a little bit about the nation of Bylos. As a capitalist nation with a representative democracy in place, they are arguably one of the most astute governments on the planet. And although they are concerned with the activities of smaller nations inland of them, nonetheless their coastal position is fairly impenetrable. Wow, that's a word. Impregnable, with a considerable number of black barrel batteries established around the city's perimeter along the ancient walls that predate most of the developments within the city. That isn't to say that the city is not a progressive one. As a matter of fact, many of those interior walls have been reconfigured to take into account the Crete material that has been imported from the highlands. And it is believed that they can take everything short of a all-out assault within the boundaries of that city. The physical description of their uniforms are predominantly black and gold, and are counterpointed by their pith helmets, which they acquired during their southern campaigns during the skirmish wars with the... Again, the name just dropped out of my head, right, when I was going to say it. This is so classic. This is so Jonathan. The Thrin. Although the Thrin are considered to be a primitive peoples, nonetheless, their massive attacks along the frontiers to the south have been causing problems for decades, and the continued action against the Thrin has been counterpointed by their support from unknown sources to the east, to the west. Wow, forget one of these days. It is believed that over the mountains, the Barbosan pirate regime has been funneling weaponry and resources to the Thrinn to maintain this attack on the great nation of Bylon, specifically because of the force that the Bylani have been able to place upon the piracy confederation, the Brotherhood, as it is commonly known. The primary export of the nation of Bylon has been up-to-date food supplies, provided generously and benevolently by the hierarchy known collectively as the hegemony of Bylon, a group of well-to-do capitalists who have, in some ways at least, usurped the local governance and begun to enforce policies simply by the value of their pocket change. Now to our setting details. The purpose for the vessel sailing southward and westward is to establish the sovereignty over the Horn of Yarlan. This eastern continent is fairly well isolated from the other nations simply by geography, with the Silver Blade Mountains bifurcating the continent almost down the middle. The Eldrin Confederation that currently occupies the heights have thus far been at worst intolerant and at most aggressive towards the nation of Bylon of late, which lends itself to the trepidation that the crew and personnel of the vessel are exhibiting. When we switch now to dealing with the setting details, this conflict, this great war, is only just beginning. At this point, Bylon has not entered the fray, nor do they show any indication that they wish to, although the launching of this great vessel, the Dreadnought, does fly in the face of Confederation agreements dating back to the period before, when the Dread Signs very nearly tore the continent in pieces. So now let's talk a little bit about our so far claimed cast. At this point, we have our engineer's mate Rigby. We haven't really even got much information about the young fellow, except that he was in business affiliation with the mysterious Mr. May. May has apparently made his escape from the relationship, or found a way to cut Mr. Rigby from the resources, hence his need to submit to a contract with this vessel and his entrance, however reluctantly, into the war effort. His training and experience suits him well for his position on the vessel, but it's clear that the persons who hired him have a greater and more deep intention for him in the world. Now, I have now given you the story so far, and as we don't know whether or not Dreadnought Squadron will be actually rolled up in our roulette wheel, we will now take a break and move over to that page to look at what our results might be.